Hello, I've decided to introduce a new feature to this channel. That is, I'm going to call it My Favourite British Film Moments. There you are, that's my title I've made up on the spot. And essentially, rather than talk about whole films, there are certain moments in films that I'm fond of, British films I'm fond of, which I would like to just highlight and just talk about briefly, just to kind of whet people's appetite maybe, to watch the whole thing, rather than trying to give an overview of the whole film. And that means I can also include maybe less obscure British films. So the first one, number one, is going to be from the legendary film Black Narcissus, produced by the Archers, Powell and Pressburger. Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger, the most famous and probably the greatest British filmmakers of all time, in my opinion. And this film, Black Narcissus, made in 1947, to my mind, is the most perfect of all their films. Now, one can discuss this, and one might disagree about this, but you know, there are two or three films by them which I think are generally regarded as their finest films. Black Narcissus is one of them, and although they're all very good, all their films are good. Well, almost all their films are good, and most of them are outstanding. But of the three main ones, being A Matter of Life and Death, The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, and then Black Narcissus, for my money, I think Black Narcissus is the one that combines all the elements of filmmaking together most perfectly to create the most overwhelming effect. And it's a very powerful film. But just very briefly, it's set in India, British India, probably I think in about the 1920s and 30s, and it's about a group of Anglican nuns who are sent up to the Himalayas, to a small village, to start a convent there and to open a school and a hospital. And it's a very isolated place. It's very high up in the Himalayas. And their convent is in an old palace, which clearly was a place of fairly kind of worldly goings on. It has erotic murals painted on the walls and so on, and not a very suitable place for a convent, really. And from the time they get there, everything starts going wrong, and without giving too much away, it ends with the nuns effectively being defeated. They're defeated by the isolation, by the altitude, but even more by the atmosphere of the place, which is very, very uncanny, and also the, if you like, the kind of cultural confrontation. Confrontation is maybe a too strong a word in a way, but what they're trying to do doesn't really seem to fit in with the place or the people or the way of life there. And it results in a huge amount of tension, effectively a tension between worldly desires and the desire of at least the Christian faith to renounce the things of this world and to concentrate on good works and so on. It doesn't work out, and in the end, one of the nuns basically appears to go mad, and it ends in this absolutely extraordinary climax. And it is the most amazing film visually, the colours, the photography, the atmosphere. They create this very, very intense atmosphere, and it gets more and more intense and overwhelming until the great climax. And at the end, well, I suppose I can give this away. In the end, as I said, the nuns are defeated. They have to give up and leave. Anyway, what I wanted to just show was one scene, a little scene. There are several moments in the film when the tension relaxes somewhat, and there are just moments when there's a bit of peace and reconciliation, although it doesn't last very long. Even in this little scene, the peace and the feeling that maybe things are going to be all right gets spoilt at the end somewhat. And it happens at Christmas, and they're in the Himalayas, and they're surrounded by snow, and they're in the chapel of their little convent, and they're singing. The nuns are singing traditional English Christmas carols. It's a very touching scene. And Sister Clodagh, who is the head of the nuns, she, as she's singing, you see her attention drifting away, and then you realise she's remembering a scene from the past in England at Christmas, and before she was a nun, with her, I think her fiancé, and you realise that something went wrong somewhere, and either she didn't get married, or I'm not quite sure, maybe the fiancé was killed. Anyway, she became a nun, and so it's a kind of very poignant memory for her of another world. And Christmas, of course, does bring back these kinds of poignant memories. And she drifts off a bit, and then comes back and looks a bit guilty. But the whole scene, for me, just creates this extremely moving atmosphere. They're in this very strange alien place, and yet within the chapel, just for a moment, they recapture this sort of comforting feeling of Christmas that we have, you know, in England and other Western countries with a Christian tradition, and everything seems a bit homely. But then two odd things happen. One is that a character called the young general, played by a very famous actor called Sabu, an Indian actor, he's a local sort of prince. He's come to the service, and he kind of joins in, and at the end he comes up to her and offers his congratulations on the birth of Christ, which is a little bit unexpected, but she deals with it quite well. But then, unfortunately, a character called Mr. Dean, who is like the local, rather kind of roue character, British character, who thinks that the nuns are all mad and he's got no time for what they're doing. He's a very worldly character. He has actually come to the service, but he turns out to be drunk, and he offends Sister Clodagh quite a lot by what he says, and then he rides off into this incredible, beautiful, snowy Himalayan landscape, singing this rather ribald song. And then it turns out that Sister Clodagh is absolutely outraged, but the young general actually rather likes Mr. Dean and says so. It's a very curious little scene, and an awful lot happens in just 3.5 minutes. It kind of goes through all kinds of different emotional areas, and the combination of the singing of the carols and the scenery and the snow and the emotions and so on. I think it's just a magical moment, and it just gives an example, just a tiny little example out of a very rich film, of how remarkable Powell and Pressburger's film direction is. So here we are, a little scene from Black Narcissus. And I should also mention, by the way, that Sister Clodagh is played by the wonderful Deborah Kerr. And so if you like this video and you're interested by it, you know, do please give it a like, and do subscribe to my channel if you feel like it, which would be very nice. Thank you.
Something for you.
For me?
Christmas present. Go on, take it.
Can't.
All that were in heavenly bliss, they made a miracle mark. Lule, my dear, so my sweetie.
Sister Clodagh?
Sister, may I congratulate you on the birth of Christ?
Thank you, General.
I hope you don't mind my coming tonight. I am very much interested in Jesus Christ. Have I said anything wrong?
No, but we don't usually speak of him so casually.
And you should. He should be casual and as much a part of life as your daily bread.
How dare you come here like this? How dare you come to our service tonight? You're unforgivable. You're objectionable when you're sober and abominable when you're drunk.
I quite agree.
If you have a spark of decency left in you, you won't come near us again.
No, I won't be a nun. No, I cannot be a nun. For I am so fond of pleasure. I cannot be a nun.
Happy Christmas!
I do like his voice. It's so nice and loud. I think he's lovely, don't you?
Good night, General.